Good morning and welcome to tonight's Cold War update. I'm Gabby.
And I'm Triana. Tensions from the U.S. and the Soviet Union keep heating up. Today we'll be breaking down the events from 1953 to 1959 regarding President Eisenhower for you.
Big changes in the Soviet Union. Stalin passed away on March 5th, 1953, ending the reign of fear that dominated for so long. Nikita Khrushchev has taken his place as first secretary of the Communist Party.
Khrushchev eventually gained full control and started de-Stalinization, easing some tensions between the powers, but the Cold War rages on.
There are changes in leadership here in the U.S. Dwight D. Eisenhower is now president, taking over from Harry Truman. He's got a new plan for the Cold War. Just months into his term, the Korean War has ended. Korea is still divided though, so things are not yet settled.
The U.S. is keeping troops in South Korea to prevent any future attacks, but many wonder if the peace will last. North Korea is still aligned with the Soviet Union, and the threat of another conflict remains high.
Over in Latin America, we have things getting messy. The CIA just backed a coup in Guatemala to overthrow President Jacobo Arbenz. U.S. officials say this stops communism from spreading, but not everyone agrees.
Some think this could cause more problems down the road. This move has increased tensions in the region, and many Latin American countries are watching closely to see what the U.S. will do next. This can lead to the start of more U.S. intervention in Latin America.
Meanwhile, Eisenhower has introduced something called the domino theory. If one country falls to communism, others will too. This idea is guiding U.S. decisions, especially in Southeast Asia.
The U.S. is already sending economic and military aid to countries like Vietnam to keep communism out. But many believe this could lead to even more American involvement in the region. Could this be a start of a larger conflict?
In Europe, tensions are rising. The Soviet Union just created the Warsaw Pact in response to NATO. It's a military alliance with Eastern Bloc countries. Now, the world is more divided than ever. Democracy versus communism.
With both sides building up their militaries, a direct conflict seems more possible than ever. The U.S. is already increasing military spending, and nuclear weapons are being stockpiled at an alarming rate.
There's been a major uprising in Hungary. Thousands of people are protesting Soviet control, hoping for U.S. help, but the U.S. isn't stepping in.
Today, the Soviet troops shut down the rebellion. The message is clear. Moscow isn't letting go. The world is shocked by the violence, and many are questioning just how much influence the U.S. really has in Eastern Europe.
In addition, another huge concern rises. Sputnik is in orbit. The Soviets just launched the first ever satellite into space. This has the U.S. on edge. If they can launch a satellite, what else can they do?
Many Americans fear that the Soviets could launch missiles from space. In response, the U.S. is forming NASA to catch up. Schools are shifting their focus to math and science to prepare for the next generation for the space race.
The Soviets didn't stop there. In November 1957, they launched Sputnik 2 with a dog on board, the first living creature in space.
In the Middle East, the U.S. is stepping up. Eisenhower announced the Eisenhower Doctrine, promising military and economic aid in any country fighting communism.
As a result of that, U.S. troops just landed in Lebanon to help keep the government stable. This shows that the United States is willing to get directly involved in conflicts outside of Europe and Asia. Let's see how long this policy will last.
The U.S. is also keeping an eye on things in Moscow, where Vice President Richard Nixon had an intense debate with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev in 1959. They discussed the merits of communism versus capitalism in a modern American kitchen.
The debate, now called the kitchen debate, was a big moment, with Nixon arguing that U.S. consumer goods showed prosperity and freedom, while Khrushchev insisted that the Soviet system would soon surpass the U.S. This exchange only escalated the Cold War tensions.
Back home, Cold War fears are everywhere. The McCarthyism is dying down after the dramatic Army McCarthy hearing, but people are still worried about communism.
Schools are running duck and cover drills. Families are building fallout shelters. The fear of nuclear war is real. Many Americans are stocking up on supplies just in case.
Even our highways are a part of the Cold War. Eisenhower just signed the Interstate Highway Act. Officials say it's for travel and business, but really it's to help move troops fast in case of a Soviet attack.
The new highways will also make it easier for civilians to evacuate cities in case of a nuclear strike. The government is taking every precaution to prepare for the worst.
And let's not forget about pop culture. The Cold War is everywhere, even in movies and music. Hollywood is releasing films about nuclear war and spying.
Sci-fi movies about alien invasions show American fear of outside threats. The government is even investigating actors and musicians for suspected communist ties. No one is safe from suspicion. I sure would be worried if I were you.
I sure am. And as the 1950s come to a close, tensions are still rising. The US and the Soviet Union are locked in a global power struggle.
With Khrushchev now firmly in power and the space race heating up, it's clear tensions are rising.
Just before Eisenhower left office in 1961, he gave a farewell address that warned against the rise of military-industrial complex. He argued that the U.S. was spending too much on defense and developing close ties between military and the arms industry, which he feared could threaten democracy.
Eisenhower called for a balance in national priorities, promoting diplomacy, fiscal responsibility, and scientific advancement, rather than relying too heavily on military expansion.
This speech serves as a warning for future leaders and highlighted the risk of military dominance in shaping national policy. It was clear that Eisenhower was concerned about the long-term consequences of the Cold War's military offerings.
This Cold War isn't cooling down anytime soon. The next decade could bring even bigger conflicts. We'll be here to cover it all.
Stay with us for more updates, and as always, stay informed.
Good night.